now, get to the appropriation bill, and with that I reserve the balance of my time.
You need me 30 seconds?
I'm sorry, Mr. Levin, I don't have any more time. Be prepared to close. Mr. Speaker.
Well, the gentleman, could I ask the gentleman from California, how much time is there on both sides, please?
The gentleman from California has 10.5 minutes, and the gentlelady from New York has 3.5 minutes.
Do you want to have some dialogue? Will the gentleman from California yield to me?
The chair recognizes that.
Mr. Speaker, I'll yield myself. Let me yield myself 1 minute. And I'm
gentleman is recognized.
No one has said that the program would be eliminated. What we have said is what the Manufacturers Association has said. It believes defunding ATVM will hurt manufacturers and their employees. There are applications at DOE for every single dollar.
We've had this. We've had this read.
California.
You don't want to hear the facts.
Mr. Speaker, I've heard it 3 times read on the House floor. We've had the debate earlier today. It was read by our colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I've heard this 3 times on the House floor. What I want to say is that we've had for 3 years the dollars that we're utilizing for the offset sitting dormant.
It's not true.
And it is not in the. It is true, and it is not in the pipeline to be expended, Mr. Speaker. And so for that reason, I believe the people of Joplin, Missouri can better utilize dollars that have been sitting for 3 years for absolutely no purpose whatsoever. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. The gentlelady from New York is recognized to close.
Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question at the end of the debate, I will offer an amendment to the rule to ensure that disaster victims get the help that they need. My amendment will allow Representative Dingell to offer a motion to strike the unacceptable House language and substitute the bipartisan Senate approach, and I yield 3 of my minutes to Mr. Dingell of Michigan.
Without objection.
Well, here we are again. Yesterday, the House rebuked the Republicans because they came forward with almost as bad a bill as this. They were going to destroy, as they are tonight, the Advanced Technology Motor Vehicle Manufacturing Program. One of the most successful programs we've had. It's made 40,000 jobs for Americans. At a time when Americans are losing their homes, losing their jobs, running out of unemployment compensation, they wanted to hear us say what we're doing about jobs, what we're doing about opportunity, what we're doing about making the economy go. So the Republicans, when they got their heads handed to them yesterday, went back to caucus and made the bill a little bit worse so that they could appeal to their right-wing extremes. And the result is that you got a bill here that's brought to us that nobody's had an opportunity to see, and a bill on which we haven't got any idea exactly what it does. We hear our good friend from California tell us how the private system of government is working. And he says it's working in China because they've got, the Chinese have forced GM to work with them to manufacture cars over there so that they can sell them over here. We say that we ought to be manufacturing those cars over here with American workers to sell over there in China and in other countries that are playing this same game with us. This is an enormously successful program, and so they're cementing their successes of yesterday by trying now to cut other programs which do this. They talk about Solyndra. Solyndra went broke for a very simple reason. I sat in the hearings. I don't think many of the other members of this did. And I heard that the reason they went under was the trade practices of the Chinese. That's why they're underselling them in an intolerable way, in spite of the fact that we tried to bring that technology over here and to make it work for the American people, to provide jobs to the American people. You know, my Republican colleagues are making a war between the American workers and American industry on the one side and those who have need of relief from the disasters. That's not good. It should not be. It is quite sufficient that we help both. There's no need to have an offset for a disaster, and time after time we have not done it. But not so the Republicans. They are out to kill Department Energy loans programs. These are programs that create jobs. Take a look in your district if they'll give you a copy of this bill and ask yourself and ask them and ask the legislation, What are they cutting that is in your district or your state that's going to make jobs and opportunity for your people? And you're going to find that when this legislation passes, God forbid it do so, that you have cut the opportunities and the well-being of your American people who desperately look to us to make the economy go again. You are burning here tonight the seed corn of the American people. You're taking and striking a major blow against the economy and the well-being of this nation. I say shame. Reject the rule, reject the previous question, and reject the proposal.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from California.
Speaker, as I recall, the gentlewoman got up to offer closing remarks.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
Oh, the gentlewoman's time has expired. Oh, okay, great. Then, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker, but don't I have 30 seconds?
The chair stands corrected. The gentlelady from New York has 30 seconds remaining.
Oh, I thought she'd already closed.
Which I would be happy to use right now.
The gentlelady from New York is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of the amendment in the record along with extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question. Mr. Speaker, I urge my
Without
colleagues
objection.
to vote no and defeat the previous question, urge a no vote on the rule of the underlying amendment, and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from California.
Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time to simply say to my colleagues that we're here for a very important reason. The reason is that we want to make sure that we don't face a government shutdown. We want to make sure that we do everything we possibly can so that the people in this country who have suffered from disasters over the past several weeks and months are able to have the resources that they need to do that. And we want to make sure, Mr. Speaker, that we do it in a fiscally responsible way so that we can do what every American and every Democrat and Republican in this House says needs to be done so we can get our economy growing and put into place pro-growth, job creation proposals. And I believe that we can do that. I think we can do it responsibly. And I will say that this is the identical package that we had last night with one modification. And that one modification is to ensure, with all due respect to my friend, the distinguished dean of this House, that we don't have another Solyndra, regardless of what some have said was the cause of their demise. When we have employees of that company coming forward and making the case that they were spending money left and right, that they were using it on some of the most outrageous things imaginable, and the employees could not understand why they built a factory when they had all of these resources in reserve. This cannot be allowed. It's not a responsible expenditure of U.S. taxpayer dollars, Mr. Speaker, and that's the reason we believe this $100 million can be used for the people who are truly in need. With that, I yield back the balance of my time and move the previous question.
The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor signify so by saying aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Speaker, on that, Mr. Speaker, I ask for yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring the vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20. The chair will reduce to 5 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote on the question of adoption. This will be a 15-minute vote.
A procedural vote related to the rule that will set the guidelines for debate on short-term federal spending for fiscal 2012. Another measure to fund the government failed yesterday, but Roll Call and Congressional Quarterly both write that Republican leadership aides say they're optimistic that they have enough GOP votes to pass the measure. We spoke with a reporter about what's different with the spending bill tonight. Todd Zwillich of The Takeaway from Public Radio International and WNYC. House Republicans have decided to make one change to the stopgap spending bill that failed in the House yesterday. What is it?
It's a small change financially, but maybe a more beneficial one politically. The major controversial offset, an offset is, raising taxes or cutting spending elsewhere to pay for spending in a bill, and the offset that is in there were cuts to an energy program that helps auto companies retool their plants to build fuel-efficient cars. That fell flat with Democrats, so now they've added in something else, small financially, only $100 million worth, which in the grand scheme of things here in Washington is not much, but it takes money from the Energy Department Loan Guarantee Program, the very same program that gave the loan guarantees to a company called Solyndra. And C-SPAN viewers would be probably familiar with Solyndra over the last couple of weeks. That's the company that went bust just a few weeks ago and then was raided by the FBI after getting about $500 million in loan guarantees from the Obama administration through this program. So why Solyndra? Well, it's not going to impress Democrats, that's for sure, but it probably has some political benefit to win over some Republicans. Tonight on the floor, Republicans will get to kind of beat on Solyndra and beat on the idea of loan guarantees for clean energy, kind of like a piñata, if you will, sort of a political piñata. And it also puts Democrats in the unenviable position of voting potentially, if they don't support this deal, voting to support a company that has been vilified in the press, vilified in Capitol Hill hearings, and has gone bust and cost the taxpayers $500 million.
If the bill passes in the House tonight, what are the bill's prospects in the Senate, which is run by Democrats?
Yeah, so far dim. There were some angry Democrats coming out of a caucus meeting earlier this evening saying the idea, forget about Solyndra, the idea of offsetting emergency aid for disasters for FEMA, which is what these offsets would pay for, $1.5 billion in disaster funding for FEMA for hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods. They do not want the precedent of coming up with pay-fors for disaster aid. That is falling flat in the Senate, and right now there's not a lot of sign of give. They've used words like dead on arrival. They've used words like non-starter. So that leaves the next steps unclear. The Senate would like to vote on what's known as a clean CR, just a clean, straight extension of current federal spending, and then let the House and Senate fight it out on the issue of FEMA funding and disaster aid separately. We have a week to go before a potential government shutdown that would happen midnight September 30th. The problem is members want to leave on vacation. They're supposed to be off next week. There are Jewish holidays for many members. So that's a complicating factor. Next steps are unclear, but there's no shutdown yet, and members from all sides say they have no interest in a shutdown, so they have to work it out.
Todd Zwillich, The Takeaway, thank you.
My pleasure.
As we heard in the interview, the temporary spending bill the House is considering tonight is largely unchanged from what failed in the House yesterday, except for the addition of a $100 million offset for $3.6 billion in disaster funding. That $100 million would come from an Energy Department program that provided loan guarantees to Solyndra. That's a bankrupt solar panel manufacturer in Fremont, California. About that company, Solyndra executives are scheduled to appear before a House subcommittee tomorrow. Their attorneys have said that during the hearing, the executives will invoke their Fifth Amendment rights. Our live coverage will be on C-SPAN 3 at 9 a.m. Eastern. As the House continues this procedural vote, the Associated Press writes that Democrats controlling the Senate are vowing to reject this latest House plan to replenish disaster aid accounts and pass a stopgap spending bill. A top Democratic aide said that if House Republican leaders try to force Senate Democrats into accepting cuts to clean energy programs, Democrats will vote the measure down as early as Friday. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid released a statement tonight saying that, quote, the bill the House will vote on tonight is not an honest effort at compromise. It fails to provide the relief that our fellow Americans need as they struggle to rebuild their lives in the wake of floods, wildfires, and hurricanes. We cannot allow this to happen, a quote from a statement from Majority Leader Harry Reid. Meanwhile, Speaker Boehner's spokesman said that the Senate should pass that measure quickly, saying, quote, any political games will delay FEMA money, getting to the folks who need it. The Senate is scheduled to be back in tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. We're going to go now to some of the debate from earlier with Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and Rules Committee Chairman David Dreyer.
Speaker, I thank the gentlelady for yielding, and I commend her for her enormous leadership, patience, and great intellect that she brings to bear on these issues. And listening to the debate, it's really almost hard to explain to someone why we're coming back tonight with the same old, warmed-over stew that was rejected yesterday by the Congress of the United States. But since then, we've had some support expressed for the initiative that is contained in this bill and against the notion that our Republican colleagues have that it's a good idea to use this as a pay-for. I take particular pride in this provision that the Republicans are trying to zero out in this bill, the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program. You will recall, Mr. Dreyer, that it was part of a bill that was passed when President Bush was president. It was the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007. It was a bill that passed the Congress with strong bipartisan support, including your support, Mr. Dreyer. In fact, 95 Republicans voted for the bill. It was an even split in the Republican caucus, 95-4, 96 against. But you recall voting for that.
Woman yield?
No, I'm sorry, because you have like a half an hour and I just don't.
I've been mentioned 3 times, Mr. Speaker. I've been mentioned 3 times, and since the gentlewoman has mentioned me, I
the gentlelady from California controls the time.
Order in the House, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman has all the time. For some reason, the Republicans are not showing their faces on the floor on this amendment, so he has plenty of time on this bill, plenty of time to speak. If he didn't, I'd be more than happy to yield to him. But since he has so much time on his own, he can use that. In any event, here's the thing. We have an initiative that is bipartisan. We have an initiative that has passed the House in overwhelming numbers, 314 to 100. 314 to 100. It passed the House. After coming back from the Senate. Yesterday, there was an attempt made to use the funds allocated to the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program to offset the disaster assistance. I myself have believe it is a matter of principle that we should just do with disaster assistance what we always have done. Have no doubt in anyone's mind that when a natural disaster strikes, the federal government will be there. FEMA will be funded, and that we don't have to look around for a place to say, let's prioritize. No, the disaster assistance is our priority. But on top of that, they use as a pay-for, again, zeroing out the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing. I don't want you to take my words for the merit of this initiative. I want to enter into a record the letter from the National Association of Manufacturers and the United States of America Chamber of Commerce.
Without objection.
Thank you. As Congress sets spending priorities, the Chamber wishes to highlight a few important facts important facts about the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Loan Program. This is from the Chamber of Commerce. First, the program was authorized in Energy Independence Security Act of 2007, which was supported by both Democrats and Republicans as an important step in reducing America's dependence on oil from unstable regimes. Second, ATMVM loans, which will be repaid with interest, incentivized automakers and suppliers to build more fuel-efficient advanced technology vehicles in the United States, providing opportunities for American workers in a sector of the economy that is critical to the nation's recovery. And then he goes on to say that this is funded by the Department of Education, and it's not the fault of industry if these funds have not been used. In the NAM, in the National Association of Manufacturers, they say similarly, we express our support for the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program authorized under the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007 with bipartisan support and signed into law by President Bush. It was a very proud day for us when President Bush signed this bill. It made tremendous advances in energy efficiency and conservation. It was a great accomplishment of the Bush administration and a Democratic Congress working together, but the bill passed in strong bipartisan fashion. Now, just mentioning that it was signed by President Bush. The ATVM program is an example of what government-industry partnerships can accomplish. It has helped create and preserve thousands of auto sector jobs and put our nation on a path toward greater energy security. The National Association of Manufacturers believes defunding ATVM will hurt manufacturers and their employees. I'll submit the rest of the letters for the record so members can read further for themselves in the congressional record, and for all who view the work of Congress. They can see the importance of these initiatives, first by the strong bipartisan support that they received in a democratically controlled Congress, but signed by a Republican president, President Bush. A very major accomplishment, I think he believes. The second point, though, is that, again, American people are looking for ways for us to create jobs. The Republicans have been in power in this Congress and this House of Representatives for over 250 days. They have not passed one bill into law which is a job creator, and today they come back to the floor a second day in a row with a job destroyer. With a job destroyer. The repetition of it is almost frivolous when you think that what we could be talking about here is a clean, continuing resolution, a clean CR, a clean, continuing resolution that will meet our needs to the November 18th. Is that it, Mr. Chairman? And then, and I thank Chairman Dix for his leadership on this important issue, Mr. Levin, certainly Mr. Dingell, who was a champion of this initiative from day one and a leader in the fight to preserve it here. It could just have been so simple. Let's just keep government open until November 18th with a clean, continuing resolution instead of coming to the floor and for the first time. Now, my colleagues will say, oh, well, we've had other emergencies that were funded. I'm not talking about emergencies. There are many emergencies. I'm talking about disasters. I'm talking about natural disasters when people's homes are swept away. This isn't political. This is very, very personal. If you've lost your home, your belongings, your livelihood, your business, your sense of community, the character of the area in which you live, as many of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle have done, when you see the nature of the natural disasters, whether it's out-of-control forest fires in Texas, what happened in Joplin, Missouri, which is almost biblical in its proportion, and what happened on the East Coast, but earthquake followed by hurricane, followed by tornado, followed by floods, and all that goes with it. You think people think that we have any relevance to their lives if we're talking about something like this when all they are saying is help? It's as if a building is on fire and you're going to figure out who's going to pay for the water instead of just running to the rescue. just running to the rescue. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this and urge my Republican colleagues to please pull this back, bring a clean CR to the floor. Let's get serious about the people's business. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from California.
Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume, and I'll be happy to yield to my distinguished California colleague at any moment as I make a couple of remarks here as she walks off the floor. I asked her to yield, Mr. Speaker, because she 3 times referenced me as it relates to the vehicle program, the Advanced Technology Vehicle Program. And let me just explain what we're faced with today, Mr. Speaker. What we're faced with is a challenge of ensuring that we get the resources necessary to the American people who are suffering because of these disasters. Now, when my California colleague was Speaker of the House, we had disasters that took place, like Hurricane Katrina. Much of that was offset, and so to act as if this is unprecedented is not a correct characterization of what has happened, because we have seen offsets for disasters in the past on numerous occasions over the last decade. In excess of $59 billion in offsets have provided for supplemental appropriations that have been out there. As it relates to the Advanced Technology Vehicle Program, I was going to say to my California colleague, who is no longer on the floor, and I'd like to yield to her if she would like to come back to respond to this, there is a total of $4 billion that is there. What we're doing is utilizing $1.5 billion. So as people say that this program is being completely eliminated, that is not a correct characterization of what has happened.
On this vote, the yeas are 200.
We're doing, Mr. Speaker. We're doing everything that we can to find every dollar that we possibly can to ensure that our fellow Americans who are suffering due to these disasters are able to have the resources that are necessary. Of the $1.5 billion, which is utilized in the offset, it's been sitting in the coffers for 3 years. For 3 years, Mr. Speaker. So to act as if we somehow are going to see some great loss of jobs is, again, a mischaracterization of what is happening. We're establishing priorities. We have a priority, that being dealing with our fellow Americans in Joplin, Missouri, who suffered from that horrible tornado that hit that area. That's my home state of Missouri, and I know how devastating. And listening to our colleague, Mr. Long, it's very clear to see in his eyes the kind of effort that he's put in to deal with the rebuilding there. That is a priority. Dealing with the photographs that we saw from Mr. Welch's district, who voted for this bill yesterday, and I suspect will vote for it again this evening, to ensure that those who suffered from flooding in Vermont have that. And as I said earlier in the day, our new colleague, Tom Marino from Williamsport, Pennsylvania, who just in the past several days.
177. The previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
May I, Mr.
Yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and yeas are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
The House voting now on the rule that will set the guidelines for debate on short-term federal spending for fiscal 2012. House Republicans added a $100 million offset to disaster funding in the legislation. That money would come from an Energy Department program that provided loan guarantees to Solyndra, a bankrupt solar panel manufacturer. Solyndra executives are scheduled to appear before a House subcommittee tomorrow. Their attorneys have said that during the hearing, the executives will invoke their Fifth Amendment rights. You can see our live coverage of that on C-SPAN 3 at 9 a.m. Eastern. The Associated Press writes that unless Congress acts on a spending bill by midnight Friday, much of the government will shut down. And more immediate is the threat that the government's main disaster aid account will run dry early next week. Up next after this vote, more debate about the short-term spending bill, followed by a vote on final passage. Right now, debate from earlier about this legislation.
Reported to my colleagues in our meeting downstairs, talking to the parents of children who were literally sitting on the hoods of their automobiles because their homes have been devastated. And the question asked by that parent to Congressman Marino is, what is it you're going to do? And he said that he would come to Washington and do everything that he possibly can, everything that he would be able to do to ensure that they have the resources they need. Now, to argue that this is pitting a fund that has been sitting dormant for 3 years and is not in the pipeline versus utilization of those resources for the American people who are suffering is a very inappropriate thing to do. So that was the discussion that I was looking forward to having with my California colleague as she talked about my support of the Advanced Technology Vehicle Program. And of course, I'm always happy to yield to my good friend from Detroit.
Look, no one is saying the total program would be obliterated.
Well, if I can reclaim my time, I will tell you what was said. Mr. Speaker, may I reclaim my time? Because the gentleman just said no one is saying that. I'm sure that my friend was not here through the entire debate.
I was.
But, well, I don't know that my friend was listening through the entire debate.
I was.
Well, Mr. Speaker, may I finish, Mr. Speaker? What I want to say is that we were told that we, on our side of the aisle, are declaring war by the statement made by our friends from Massachusetts, and from that, one would have to infer that we were trying to obliterate a program. When we, Mr. Speaker, have 3 years of those dollars sitting dormant, not being expended, and not in the pipeline, we believe that we can utilize those dollars for the American people who are truly in need. We need to move ahead with that as expeditiously as possible, and I think that we should try to do that right now, get to the appropriation bill, and with that I reserve the balance of my time.
You need me 30 seconds?
I'm sorry, Mr. Levin, I don't have any more time. Be prepared to close. Mr. Speaker.
Well, the gentleman, could I ask the gentleman from California, how much time is there on both sides, please?
The gentleman from California has 10.5 minutes, and the gentlelady from New York has 3.5 minutes. Gentlelady from New York.
Dialogue. Will the gentleman from California yield to me?
The chair recognizes the
Mr. Speaker, I'll yield myself. Let me yield myself 1 minute. And I'm
gentleman is
recognized.
recognized.
No one has said that the program would be eliminated. What we have said is what the Manufacturers Association has said. It believes defunding ATVM will hurt manufacturers and their employees. There are applications at
Mr. Speaker,
DOE
may I reclaim
for
my time?
every
Three
single
times,
dollar.
Mr. Speaker, we've had this. We've had this read.
You don't want to hear the facts.
Mr. Speaker, I've heard it 3 times read on the House floor. We've had the debate earlier today. It was read by our colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I've heard this 3 times on the House floor. What I want to say is that we've had, for 3 years, the dollars that we're utilizing for the offset sitting dormant.
It's not true.
And it is not in the... It is true, and it is not in the pipeline to be expended, Mr. Speaker. And so for that reason, I believe the people of Joplin, Missouri can better utilize dollars that have been sitting for 3 years for absolutely no purpose whatsoever.
This vote, the yeas are 238, the nays are 176. The resolution is adopted, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Yeah. House will be in order. House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.R. 2608.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to the House resolution just adopted, I call up the bill H.R. 2608 with a Senate amendment thereto and have a motion at the desk.
Clerk will report the title of the bill, designate the Senate amendment, and designate the motion.
H.R. 2608, an act to provide for an additional temporary extension of programs under the Small Business Act and the Small Business Investment Act of 1958 and for other purposes. Senate amendment. Mr. Rogers of Kentucky moves that the House concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 2608 with an amendment.
Pursuant to House Resolution 412, the motion shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Appropriations. The gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Rogers, and the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Dix, each will control 30 minutes. The House will be in order first. House will be in order. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may.
The gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise tonight to bring to the floor the continuing appropriations resolution to keep the federal government operating until November 18, 2011. Before you is a slightly amended version of the bill, which is necessary after last night's vote. I hope that my colleagues recognize the urgency of this situation and will join me in taking the responsible step and support this CR. This bill must pass. May we have order?
Gentlemen will suspend. The House will be in order. The members in the back of the chamber, please take their conversations to the cloakroom. Gentleman from Kentucky.
This bill must pass if we're going to keep our word to the American people. We need to get help to Americans who need it most, those who've lost their homes, their businesses, to the unforgiving natural disasters that have beset us. FEMA is rapidly burning through its emergency funding and its ability to help those people recover from the tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires, and other disasters. Right now, at this minute, FEMA had $200 million left in the coffer. They're spending at the rate of $30 million a day for disaster relief. And at this rate, of course, they'll be out of money over the weekend. This infusion of funding, $1 billion in emergency fiscal year 2011 disaster funding, and $2.65 billion for fiscal 12, is critical. I can't stress that enough. And it will go far to relieve the burdens of those who are in need tonight. This version of the bill creates an additional offset to the fiscal 11 emergency funding. In addition to the $1.5 billion offset from the Vehicle Loan Program, we're rescinding $100 million from the Innovative Technology Loan Guarantee Program, a section of the failed Stimulus Act that funded the now bankrupt company Solandra. The CR also continues government operations at a rate of $1,043 billion. That's the amount agreed to by the Congress and the White House in August as part of the debt ceiling compromise and is on the law books of the country. This reduced responsible rate will help restore our nation's fiscal health. It's vital that Congress pass this legislation as swiftly as possible. We must prevent a government shutdown, and we have to replenish exhausted disaster recovery funds, which will dry up over the weekend. And just as importantly, we need time to complete work on the fiscal year 2012 appropriations legislation, so we can avoid the uncertainty and instability that we saw last year when it took us until April to complete full-year appropriations legislation. I urge my colleagues to vote for this bill, not only to keep the government running, but also to help the hundreds of thousands of Americans relying on us to get them back on their feet all across the country. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves his time. House will be in order. Gentleman from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I know as well as anyone that members change their minds. I've heard a lot about that the last couple of days, but here we are debating essentially the same bill that we voted on yesterday. Many Republicans who voted no last night did so because they believe $1.043 trillion is too much spending. The bill before us tonight spends $1.043 trillion. I will be the first to say every member is entitled to change his or her mind. However, I am eager to hear my Republican colleagues who voted no yesterday answer why it is okay to vote yes today. And I hope these members will not hang their hat on the one fig leaf of change in the bill. The bill now includes a rescission of $100 million in emergency funding from Section 1705 of the Renewable DOE Loan Program. A rescission of emergency funds does not score as a reduction from the $1.043 trillion. Democrats voted no for two reasons. We strongly oppose taking funding from the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program. This is a program that has proven to be a success in creating new jobs, and such a success that the National Association of Manufacturers and the Chamber of Commerce of the United States have both called upon the Congress to not cut out this program because, one, it's repaid. The money is repaid, and it is creating jobs, something the majority has not done in the months that they've been in the majority. This is a jobs program. We strongly oppose the notion that efforts to help Americans rebuild their lives after floods, hurricanes, wildfires, and other natural disasters should be put on hold until Congress can agree on offsetting reductions in spending. We will continue to vote no because the bill continues to require an offset to provide disaster relief funding, and that offset is misguided. Republicans take $1.5 billion from the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program at the Department of Energy to pay for $1 billion in disaster relief. The Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program was started in 2008 to reinvigorate American manufacturing. To date, the program has awarded $3.5 billion of credit subsidy to promote energy-efficient advanced vehicles and their component parts. The Department of Energy estimates the loan guarantees have created or maintained 39,000 jobs in California, Delaware, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, Michigan, Missouri, and Tennessee. Some have suggested that this program has been slow to spend emergency funding provided in the FY 2000 CR. I say the loan process ought to be strenuous. Our company, one company originally applied under a different loan program in 2006 and received an ATVM loan in 2010. It required 4 years of due diligence and review to qualify for the loan. Republicans seem to be issuing an ultimatum to all loan programs. Expedite the review process or see your funding transferred away. By the way, the company in question, Telsa, employed about 400 employees before receiving the loan. Today they have 1,400 employees in the field of engineering research and development, design, manufacturing, assembly, maintenance, and service sales and support. The ATVM program has an additional 18 loan applications in progress that are projected to create 50,000 to 60,000 more jobs in California, Florida, Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, Missouri, and Ohio. One pending application would support investments at 11 plants in Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. The company employs over 56,000 workers, having added nearly 9,000 new workers since 2009. Some of these jobs will be at risk because of this offset. This is not the time to put American manufacturing jobs at risk, and that is why the National Association of Manufacturers expressed their support for the ATVM program in a letter to the Senate dated September 22nd, noting the ATVM program is an example of what government-industry partnerships can accomplish. It has helped create and preserve thousands of auto sector jobs. The NAM believes defunding ATVM will hurt manufacturers and their employees, and the Chamber of Commerce agrees with them. Now, I think it's time for us to stay with our position and vote no and get us clean CR. That's what I asked the committee to do. We need a clean CR. We don't need this offset. And I yield back. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from Kentucky.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished chairman of the Commerce, Justice, Science Subcommittee on Appropriations.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized
Virginia,
for
Mr.
2
Wolf.
minutes.
2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in strong support of H.R. 2698 to provide the continuing resolution for the initial weeks, and I want to be sure that we keep the government open, and by passing this bill, we will keep the government open. This bill is needed to keep vital government services and programs operating past the end of the fiscal year on September 30th. As the gentleman from Kentucky has stated, the Committee on Appropriations has made great progress in moving 11 of the 12 annual bills. However, additional time is needed for the consideration of the others. This continuing resolution, for anyone who questions it, conforms to the spending reduction targets that were agreed to by the House, the Senate, and the White House. It's exactly the same number, and so no reason to vote against it. Specifically, the bill sets an annual rate that reduces overall discretionary spending by 1.5% from fiscal year 2011. In addition, the bill provides disaster funding to provide much-needed assistance to individuals, communities suffering from hurricane and flood damage. The state of Virginia has been hit, as many others. I urge all my colleagues to vote for this bill. By voting for the bill, we will keep the government open. The American people sometimes think this institution and this town is dysfunctional. We can show that we can do our work. Pass this bill. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Washington.
I yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from North Carolina, the ranking member on the Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee and former chair, Mr. Price.
Gentleman's recognized for 4 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, here we go again. Just yesterday, this continuing resolution failed because of widespread concerns with the plan to offset disaster relief funding from a key Department of Energy program. 1 day later, we're having the exact same debate. The only thing that's changed is that the Republican majority has decided this time to target 2 Energy Department programs instead of 1. When the measure failed yesterday, House Republican leaders faced a basic decision. They could give up their efforts to hold disaster funding hostage to another partisan budget battle by removing the offset and passing the bill with a broad bipartisan majority. Or they could make the measure even more extreme in order to cater to the most radical members of their party without concern for the fact that FEMA is just days away from running out of money, and communities around the country are waiting desperately for the support that's been promised them. Now, anybody who's been watching this Congress for the last 8 months should not be the least surprised by the majority's decision. Once again, Republicans have put partisan ideology ahead of the dire needs of the American people and are risking yet another destabilizing standoff over spending cuts in the process. So now we're debating under a martial law rule a bill that is even worse than it was yesterday. It still seeks to pay for urgent disaster relief needs by taking money from a major job-creating program at the Department of Energy. As I said in this chamber yesterday, this is a radical departure from the way we have treated emergency disaster relief in the past. Over the past 10 years, Congress has approved 16 supplementals that included emergency funding for FEMA disaster relief in response to disasters such as 9/11, Katrina, Rita, Gustav, and Ike, and floods on the Mississippi, Missouri, and other rivers. None of these emergency appropriations for the Disaster Relief Fund were paid for with cuts to other federal programs. Yesterday, I heard several of my friends on the other side of the aisle claim that we've offset disaster assistance numerous times over the past decade. This is simply not accurate. Some of the supplemental bills that included disaster relief also included offsets. But these offsets were used to pay for entirely separate programs, never for FEMA's Disaster Relief Fund. As I said yesterday, this insistence on offsets is bad precedent and it's bad policy. It leaves disaster-affected communities in the lurch while undermining our economic recovery by cannibalizing an Energy Department program that stands to add tens of thousands of good-paying jobs in an industry critical to our future economic competitiveness. And it goes even further than that by including a gratuitous and arbitrary rescission to another Department of Energy loan program, a change aimed at scoring political points against the President and winning Tea Party votes. But it has very little to do with balancing the budget or providing relief for those in need. Moreover, rather than approving a bill that would win passage in the Senate, we are now sending over a measure that the Senate majority is on record opposing, causing more economic uncertainty, risking yet another manufactured crisis. So, Mr. Speaker, I once again urge colleagues to oppose this measure, to support the Senate's approach to disaster relief instead, which would fully fund FEMA's needs without holding them hostage to another partisan budget battle. Now yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlemen,
reserve the balance of my time. I'm sorry. Reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Washington controls time. The gentleman from North Carolina yields his time back. Gentleman from Kentucky.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the chairman of the Homeland Security Subcommittee on Appropriations, gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Aderholt.
Gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the distinguished chair for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of this must-pass resolution. This CR not only keeps the government operating, but it provides a substantial infusion of desperately needed funding totaling $3.65 billion for disaster relief and emergency flood control efforts. That's funding to sustain disaster relief efforts in hard-hit states all across this nation, including the devastation that hit my home state of Alabama back in April of this year. That's funding to address the record flooding up and down the Mississippi River and along the East Coast resulting from Hurricane Irene. That's funding to help tens of thousands of people who have lost virtually everything but the shirts on their back. Mr. Speaker, the time for talk and the time for politicking is over. It's time to pass this vital resolution, provide our nation with necessary disaster relief funding, avert a government shutdown, allow Congress to scrub the administration's full disaster supplemental requests, provide the needed oversight, and complete the work on the FY12 budget. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support this vital resolution and responsibly address our nation's most pressing needs. I thank the chairman for yielding, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields his time back. Gentleman from Washington.
I yield 4 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Indiana, the ranking member of the Energy and Water Appropriations Subcommittee.
Gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 4 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I rise in opposition to the measure. During the debate on the rule on this measure, Joplin, Missouri was mentioned quite often. But I would mention that there is an emergency as far as Tuscaloosa, Alabama is concerned. Hamburg, Iowa is concerned, Cairo, Illinois is concerned, Springfield, Massachusetts, certainly Joplin, Missouri, Smithfield, Mississippi, Williston, North Dakota, states like Vermont. Subsequent to the rains and floods of this spring, we've had earthquakes, we've had wildfires, we've had hurricanes. The current need of the Army Corps is about $2.257 billion. So the first observation I would make is the offsets that are set aside in this bill are certainly inadequate to cover that amount. But there is a further emergency in this country, and that is the fact that as of August of this year, there were 13,967,000 Americans who were without work. In the year 2000, 8% of the people who live in the great state of Indiana were living in poverty. Today, 16% of the people in the state of Indiana are living in poverty. And for those we represent who are working today for 1 hour's worth of their labor, they're making 53 cents less today in real purchasing power than they did in 1977. Today, there are 6,643,000 less Americans working in manufacturing, making a living wage, than there were in 1977. So the response is, let's take $1.5 billion out of an investment account where there are still 10 pending applications to try to make cars in this country more efficiently, more fuel efficient, and more desirable for consumers. But earlier tonight we heard, don't worry, the Chinese are going to help our car companies with financing. I'm affronted by that possibility. That's why we need this $1.5 billion, so maybe we could still make cars in the United States of America without the help of the Chinese government. I think this is a wrong-headed approach. And then let's pile on. There's obviously a controversy about a solar company in California. I think perhaps it is a matter to be considered not only by oversight in the United States Congress, but the Justice Department. But that's not a decision for us to make if wrongdoing has occurred. But you know what? Let's take it out on somebody else. Let's make sure there's not money available for other legitimate companies who are trying to increase jobs in this country and who are trying to reduce our dependency on foreign oil. That wasn't the response I saw in this body in 2008. We had the major financial institutions of this country drive our economy into the ground. Did we ask them to give back their tax advantages? Did we punish them in any way? We gave them money. We gave them money. We should at least pick on somebody our own size. We didn't ask anybody in Iraq or Afghanistan whether or not they needed an offset for emergency money for schools, for hospitals, for bridges. The people in Joplin, the people in Vermont, the people in these other communities, they need our help now. Traditionally, we have recognized the emergency, we have declared the emergency, and we have helped them out. And when Bill Clinton was President of the United States, we declared emergencies like this on 3 occasions, in 1998, 99, and 2001, and we balanced the budget. I oppose this